Welcome back. In this video we are going to start with the preparation for our project. So we're not going to see too much yet, but it's really about getting things set up, and we're going to use a lot of features that we have used before, a lot of code that we have used before. So there will be a lot of copy and pasting because it doesn't really make sense for me to type everything in once again, because really it's just copy and pasting from other projects. It's really just the same code that we are going to need, for example, for the permissions. So it doesn't make sense to write everything anew, because you know how to build up permissions, right, using Dexter. Then it's going to be the same thing for using a dialog. So when we want to display a dialog, we're just going to use our custom dialog once again. So no need to use a bunch of new code there. It's going to be the same code again and again. So you already see you can reuse a lot of the features that you have used in the past, and that is super powerful because it really helps you to build applications a lot quicker. And each time that you build something new, you will learn a bunch of new features that you can then most likely reuse in other projects that you're going to work on. So that's why it really makes sense to just go through many different projects, to practice a lot, and to just get started by building as many projects as possible, because then you can reuse a bunch of the code, or at least reuse a bunch of the thought process that you had. So you can get quicker to a solution. All right, so I'd say let's just get started with an empty activity, because of course we want to build as many projects as possible, and the quicker we start, the more we can get done. So this one will be our weather app, and then it's going to be API 21, and let's click finish. So in this video, we are just going to set up the dependencies, and then we're going to set up the permissions so that we get access to the location of the user, because we want to have the latitude and longitude of the user in order to then later on display the weather at this location. All right, so let's get started by going to the Gradle, because in there we're going to need a bunch of dependencies here in build Gradle, and here I'm gonna add them right before the test implementation. So let's get started. We will need the Google material, so Android material, this one here, because we're gonna need some of its designs and features. Then the Play Services location, so we want to have the location of the user. And then finally, or at least for now, finally, we will also need Dexter. So we're going to use Karumi Dexter, which is going to be used for requesting permissions. All right. When we're at the topic of permissions, we of course need to go to our Android manifest and ask for permissions here also, because otherwise, of course, it's not going to work. So let's go to the application and then do the activity where I'm just gonna set the screen orientation to be portrait. So the app will always just display in portrait mode. And then of course we're going to need the location. So you can of course also add the internet requirements, so users permission for internet and everything, but I think we're just gonna do that later on. So here, access, find a location, and then users permission, access, course location. So it's just going to be those two for now. Okay, find location and course location, so that we get the location of the user. All right. By the way, we also need to sync our Gradle. So let's do that so that we can access all of the third-party libraries that we have added there. So here in the Gradle, we added those three, and we of course need to sync our Gradle file in order to be able to use those features. Okay, and the main activity, that's where pretty much everything will happen. This is going to be the heart of our application. Here we will need to check if the location is enabled. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the same code that we have used many times already whenever we had to get the location of the user, which is location enabled, which will return a Boolean. So what we do here is we create the location manager object, which will be the location service, and then we return the result of is provider enabled. So this pretty much means is GPS enabled, and that's what we're going to return here. Okay, so is it either GPS or is it the network provider? So I want to have this either or check, because we can also get a bunch of information from the location manager.network provider. So often enough this will be already good enough, because we don't need to know the specific location of the user by 50 feet or something like that, but it's good enough if we have the information, let's say 1,000 feet apart, or maybe even 10,000 feet away. For example, if an antenna is, I don't know, let's say 10,000 feet away, it will still be rather precise when it comes to the temperature, the wind, and everything. And then for now, what we will do is in onCreate, we will check if the location is enabled or not. So if it's not enabled, is location not enabled, then I want to write a little toast, which will just tell the user that the provider is turned off and he should please turn it on. So this means please turn on your GPS. Okay, your location provider is turned off, please turn it on. So that's what we're going to tell him if the location is not enabled. All right, and if it's not enabled, we can also directly redirect him to the settings where he can change those settings. Okay, and hereby we create an intent where we go to settings, action, location, source settings, which will allow us to then make the change. So activate the location. So for example, activate GPS. And then if we have the provider activated, so if we have GPS or the network provider here, then we want to write another toast saying your location provider is already on or turned on or something like that. Okay, so this application isn't that complex yet, but we're just going to build it up step by step, as you can see. So the first thing was to even check if we have GPS or not before we do any fancy stuff, before we do any downloading data and testing anything, because in order to display the weather for a current location, we of course need to have the current location. So it makes sense to start with getting the location of the user. All right, and let me run that once again. You can see your location provider is already turned on. And then in order to test it, really, you also need to turn off location. So you can go to the settings. If you really want to test it, then here, go to location, and then turn off location. And now let's test the application again, just to see if it's gonna, and as you can see, that location is directly opened up. So it directly goes to this intent here, which is this action, location, source settings. Let me show you once again. So I started, well, actually, let's move out. Let's start once again. And you can see it automatically opens up this application. So opens up this location settings, and you can directly turn on the location. So if you really need some specific settings, you can go to those settings directly via an intent. So this is super powerful stuff. It is very useful in many different occasions. I've recently installed an application which told me to activate 6 different settings. So I had to go through my phone settings so many different times, but the beauty was it led me directly to the right settings. So I didn't have to search for them specifically, but I could just click on change settings, and then it would send me to those settings, and I could change that. Because this is one of the most annoying things, that if you install an application, it first of all asks you to do a ton of things and make changes to your phone and so forth without it guiding you and helping you out, because it's super frustrating, and then you can just deactivate the application altogether, or many users will do, and they will uninstall it. So this is something that you have to be very careful with and also wary about when you need all of those different permissions and those settings to be true and so forth. But usually this is something that you can expect every phone user having active. So usually people have the location services active. All right, so I think this is a great point for a break. Now we have this feature, and now let's go to the next video where we are going to get the location, because so far we don't get the location, we just check if the location is enabled. All right, so the next thing will of course be to use Dexter in order to ask for permissions and so forth. All right, so see you in the next one.